It starts with your grocery bill. Just when you thought it couldn't climb any higher, the next shocker hits tomatoes. A 17% import tax, fallout from President Trump's trade war, pushes tariffs to levels not seen since the Great Depression. Trucks idle at border crossings. Crates of ripe tomatoes wither under a blazing sun. Fields in California sit eerily empty. And at the edge of small towns, auction signs creak like tombstones for family farms. But here's the bridge. This isn't just about tomatoes. This is about the arteries of America, mortgages, schools, hospitals. When the food stops moving, whole towns collapse. And here's the loop. If one crop can unravel this fast, what happens when the same pressure hits everything else on your table? The first domino, Canada pulls the plug. Across North America, a domino falls. Canada slams its border shut. Mexico seizes the moment. American farmers are left stranded. What seems like a technical dispute is, in reality, a survival crisis. Because when food stalls, so do the communities built on it. Here's the bridge. Sarah Martinez, a third-generation farmer in Salinas Valley, remembers the moment it hit home. One sip of coffee, one call from her distributor, Canada's pulling the plug. 40 years of cross-border tomato trade erased overnight. And the loop. If Canada, America's closest ally, can walk away this easily, who's next? Behind the ban. The real strategy. Canada's official story blamed pesticides and quality standards. But beneath the bureaucratic wording was a reshuffle of North American agriculture. Within 48 hours, 147 truckloads were turned back at the Peace Bridge. Another 89 shipments sat stranded at the Ambassador, refrigerated cargo losing value by the hour. On paper, that's $340 million in lost exports. In real life, that's 2,400 families losing mortgage payments, school funding disappearing, and rural healthcare systems already on life support. Here's the bridge. 3 weeks before the ban, Canada quietly invested $180 million in greenhouses in British Columbia and Ontario. The capacity? Almost identical to what they'd been importing from California. Fresno farmer Tom Richardson put it bluntly, "They didn't ban our tomatoes because they were bad. They banned them because they didn't need us anymore." And the loop. If one ally can replace America so smoothly, what happens when global markets catch on? Mexico's golden opportunity. While rejection letters still sat warm on Canadian desks, Mexico pounced. A $12 billion deal with European investors came together in record time. Sinaloa, Sonora, Baja California. Suddenly, the new darlings of international agriculture. Here's the breakdown. $7.2 billion into hydroponic greenhouses producing tomatoes year-round with 40% less water. $3.1 billion into ports, highways, and cold storage to move produce faster than ever. $1.7 billion into people. Training programs, agricultural universities, and research facilities that leapfrog outdated U.S. systems. The bridge is the speed. Within 8 months, Mexican tomatoes hit European supermarkets, undercutting U.S. prices by 23%. Economist Maria Elena Vasquez called it strategic brilliance. And here's the loop. If U.S. farmers are losing ground on tomatoes this quickly, how long before other crops follow? The ripple. Beyond the farm gate. When tomato trucks stop rolling, the damage ripples outward. In Watsonville, a plant employing 340 people closed indefinitely. Trucking companies cut down to skeleton crews. Fertilizer suppliers, repair shops, and diners where drivers once ate. Every link in the chain squeezed. Economists call it the multiplier effect. For every farm dollar lost, nearly $2 vanish in the surrounding economy. Small towns call it devastation. Preliminary reports show farm counties facing 34% unemployment spikes. Food processors limp at 60% capacity. For the first time in decades, America's most fertile regions are bleeding population. Here's the bridge. Janet Morrison, superintendent in Delano, puts it simply, we're losing families every week. Generations uprooted. Property values down 19%. Schools closing. Hospitals cutting services. And the loop, if the regions that once fed the continent are collapsing, what does that mean for the country they sustain? The global chessboard. Step back and the picture sharpens. Tomatoes are only the stage. The real play is power. Europe's investment in Mexico is about more than crops. It's about reducing reliance on North American supply chains. Russia hoards exports. China stockpiles grain. America isolates itself. The bridge? Europe learned this lesson in the energy crisis. Never depend on one supplier. So when Mexico offered an alternative, investors didn't just see profit, they saw security. And here's the loop. If tomatoes can flip this fast, what happens when wheat, corn, or soy fall into the same game? Technology leaves the farm behind. While U.S. exports stall, Mexico reinvents agriculture. Smart sensors track nutrients in real time. Climate-controlled rooms guarantee harvests regardless of weather. Automated systems cut labor costs by 41%. Water use? Traditional U.S. fields need 3,300 gallons per ton. New hydroponics do it with 1,980. But here's the bridge. U.S. research labs, tied up in red tape and short of funding, can't keep pace. European firms export their best tech south, while American farms run equipment from decades past. And the loop. If America can't modernize at the speed of its rivals, how long before the technology gap becomes a gulf too wide to cross? Infrastructure, built for yesterday. America's agricultural backbone was built on the assumption the world would always buy American. Huge processors, rail hubs, cross-border trucking, all designed for volumes that no longer exist. Processing capacity now sits 34% above domestic demand. Trucking for cross-border loads is down 62%. Rail moves fewer goods, but costs stay the same. The bridge is this. Overcapacity drives up per-unit costs, making U.S. exports even less competitive. And here's the loop. When your infrastructure becomes a liability, how do you rebuild an empire that was designed for a world that no longer exists? Families on the brink. Behind every rejected shipment is a family ledger in crisis. Farmers borrow against harvest to fund planting. When markets vanish, the math breaks. Loan delinquencies in tomato regions are up 78%, bankruptcies up 45%. And that's just the farms that can afford to file. Many simply walk away from land held for generations. Here's the bridge. Robert Chen near Stockton knows the pain. His 240 acres once brought in $1.2 million annually. Within 3 weeks of Canada's ban, he went from profitable to insolvent. 40% of our revenue disappeared overnight. The rest couldn't cover debt. And the loop. If stable family farms can collapse in weeks, what chance do struggling operations have in the months ahead? Washington's silence. When farmers begged for leadership, Washington delivered confusion. 6 months in, agencies are still assessing impacts. Disaster aid doesn't apply to trade wars. Crop insurance doesn't cover lost markets. Subsidies are useless when there's no one to sell to. The bridge? Hearings focus on blame instead of fixes. Trade reps promise it's temporary, but offer no timelines. Meanwhile, Mexico accelerates investment and Canada locks in new partners. And here's the loop. If America delays while its rivals move, how much of the market will be left to reclaim? Consumers feel the shift. For now, consumers see only hints of the crisis. Tomato prices up 31%. Shelves restocked with Mexican produce that arrives fresher, cheaper, and with certifications matching or even beating U.S. standards. The bridge is simple economics. Retailers follow consistency and cost. The old Buy American impulse weakens when shoppers face higher prices or empty shelves. And here's the loop. If American consumers no longer care where their food comes from, how will domestic farms ever win them back? The reckoning. Idle trucks at the border aren't just freight. They're a warning. A Canadian ban revealed the fragility of U.S. agriculture. A $12 billion Mexican partnership showed how fast leadership flips. The numbers are grim. $340 million in lost exports. 24,400 families at risk. Bankruptcies climbing. Supply chains unraveling. Technology slipping away. Policy stalled. Here's the bridge. The tomato crisis isn't the end. It's the beginning. Every month of delay, every innovation by competitors, every consumer choice for imports widens the gap. And the loop closes here. If tomatoes can topple America's agricultural dominance, what happens when the next crop falls? The real test isn't what's already happened, it's what happens next. Subscribe to stay ahead of the shifts reshaping global food security and to see whether America rebuilds its role as the world's breadbasket or becomes dependent on those who took its place.